Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. James Carter, a 68-year-old black farmer, had spent his entire life working the land in Mississippi. His rough, scarred hands told the story of years of toil under a relentless sun. But after decades of cultivating his land and crops, he had finally saved enough to fulfill an unlikely dream, buying his own private jet. He entered the luxurious showroom of the private jet dealership in Atlanta, his heart pounding. The walls were covered with photos of celebrities and millionaire businessmen, all smiling in front of their gleaming jets. James approached the counter, hoping to get information on a model that had caught his eye for weeks. But the reception he received was far from what he had imagined. The receptionist, a blonde woman with an icy smile, looked him up and down. "Excuse me. Are you sure you're in the right place?" she asked in a syrupy but sharp tone. "These jets are for serious clients." James felt his face tighten. He knew he had saved every penny, invested wisely, but the woman seemed to be judging his worth before he'd even had a chance to speak. He tried to remain calm. "I'm here to buy a jet, ma'am. I have the money and I'm ready to discuss the available models." She burst out laughing, a laugh that echoed cruelly throughout the room. "Sir, this kind of plane isn't for someone like you. Perhaps you should try something more affordable." James's heart sank, but a spark of defiance shone in his eyes. All his life, he had been underestimated, ignored, or judged because of his skin color and unassuming appearance. But never had he been so humiliated. And that day, he knew he wouldn't be crushed. He calmly removed his dusty cap and said, his voice calm but firm, "You don't know who you're talking to. I may not be dressed like your other clients, but I'm the one who can buy this jet, and I'm going to." Behind that humble face hid a man who had never yielded to judgment. And on that day, James Carter was going to show them that beneath the calloused hands of an old farmer sometimes lies the power to change the established order. The midday sun shone brightly on Atlanta, reflecting off the glass facades of the luxurious private jet dealership building. James Carter parked his old, dusty red pickup truck in the customer parking lot. He got out slowly, leaning on his cane. His dark eyes, despite his age and weariness, shone with quiet determination. Inside, the lobby exuded luxury. The floors were polished marble, the armchairs immaculate white leather, and the aircraft on display seemed to float beneath the carefully placed lights. Every detail reminded James of the world of the rich and powerful, a world he had always observed from afar, but to which he now belonged, a right earned through hard work and perseverance. He approached the counter, where a young blonde woman with perfectly manicured nails was checking her phone with an air of natural superiority. James cleared his throat softly. "Hello, my name is James Carter. I'm interested in one of your private jets. Could we discuss it?" The woman barely raised her eyes, letting out a high-pitched laugh. "Sir, I don't think you quite understand. These jets are for serious clients. You don't seem to be one of them." James felt a mixture of anger and surprise. He knew his unassuming appearance, flannel shirt, plain trousers, worn shoes, could be misleading, but he hadn't expected such a blatant humiliation. He took a deep breath and calmly replied, "I'm not here to be judged on my looks. I'm here to buy a jet. If you want to treat me seriously, we can discuss models and prices." The woman burst out laughing, this time louder. "Sir, are you joking? These planes cost millions. Have you ever handled that much money?" At that moment, a small group of vendors had gathered behind her, watching the scene with amusement. James felt all eyes on him. But instead of backing away, he straightened his shoulders. His calloused hands trembled slightly, but his gaze was steady. "Ma'am, I own several farms in Mississippi and agricultural investments throughout the state. Every penny I've earned comes from my work and my decisions. I may not look like a millionaire, but I can buy that plane today if you'll let me talk to a real advisor." A heavy silence fell over the hall. The woman frowned, visibly annoyed by James's quiet determination. It was the first time a customer had responded to her arrogance with such calm and certainty. Suddenly, a nearby door opened, and a man in a black suit, with impeccably styled hair and piercing eyes, emerged from the office. "Hello, I'm Michael Harding, senior consultant." He approached and observed James. "Are you looking for a specific model?" James nodded. "Yes, the Falcon 8X. I want to look at the options and configurations." Michael smiled, slightly amused. "Very well, follow me." As they walked away, the blonde receptionist gave James one last defiant look, as if to say, "We'll see if you can afford to stay here." But James didn't look away. For him, it was no longer a question of judgment or humiliation. It was a question of rights. And he was ready to show that an old black farmer could be much more than the world wanted to believe. Michael Harding led James through the lobby to a vast showroom where several private jets were on display. The air was scented with a subtle blend of new leather and high-end cleaning products. Each aircraft seemed to gleam with an almost unreal perfection. "This is the Falcon 8X, Mr. Carter," Michael announced, stopping in front of an elegant black and silver aircraft with perfect airlines. "It offers comfort, performance, and cutting-edge technology." James approached slowly, placing his hands on the smooth fuselage. His rough fingers brushed the surface, but he wasn't impressed by the superficial luxury. "Very nice, but what about fuel consumption, annual maintenance costs, and cabin customization options?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Michael, a little surprised, nodded. "Of course, we can customize the interior, the seats, the connectivity." But as they began their technical discussion, the blonde receptionist, who had discreetly followed James, approached with a mocking smile. "Excuse me, Mr. Carter, but I think it would be best if you came back when you have a little more money. You know, some clients prefer everything to be ready before they even look at a jet." James looked at her calmly, unfazed. "You seem to think I don't understand anything about business. I've run several farms and managed millions of dollars in investments. My money is legitimate, and I'm perfectly capable of buying that plane if I want to." The receptionist chuckled, clearly amused by what she considered a show. But Michael intervened before the situation escalated. "Very well. Mr. Carter, don't let anyone disconcert you. I suggest we take a complete tour of the plane and I show you the available options." James followed Michael onto the plane. Inside, the luxury was evident: beige leather seats, adjustable mood lighting, fold-down tables, and a state-of-the-art entertainment system. But James, more interested in the financial and technical aspects, asked precise questions about depreciation, operating costs, and resale potential. Each answer he gave showed Michael that this man wasn't just a dreamer, he knew his numbers perfectly. However, the blonde receptionist wasn't discouraged. She began whispering to her colleagues, trying to sow doubt about James, implying that he would never close the sale. She had underestimated something crucial: James Carter's patience and determination. At the end of the tour, Michael looked at James with growing respect. "You know, Mr. Carter, very few clients ask these kinds of questions. Most just look at the luxury and sign the check. You're different." James smiled slightly. "I prefer to understand what I'm buying rather than being blinded by appearances." As they stepped off the plane, James felt a thrill of satisfaction. He had withstood the initial humiliation, shown he knew his stuff, and gained an unexpected ally in Michael. But he knew the blonde receptionist wasn't going to give up so easily. The toughest test was yet to come. James Carter left the plane with a feeling of satisfaction mixed with vigilance. He knew that some of the dealership employees underestimated him, but he also sensed that Michael Harding was now taking him seriously. Yet the blonde receptionist hadn't given up. She had clearly decided to test James's patience and discredit his intentions in front of everyone. As they headed towards the sales office to review contracts and financing options, she suddenly appeared in front of them with a fake, condescending smile. "Oh, Michael, you're not going to let this gentleman sign anything without checking his bank account, are you?" Her eyes flashed with defiance. She had prepared a little remark that she thought would ridicule James in front of Michael and the other salesman. James, unperturbed, placed his hand on the desk and stared at it calmly. You talk about my bank account as if you have the right to judge my creditworthiness based on my appearance. Michael, do you want me to provide you with all the necessary documents for the transaction, or should I wait for your advice before wasting my time? Michael, clearly embarrassed by the receptionist's attitude, replied, No, James. I'd prefer we focus on the transaction. Show me your documents. The receptionist took a small step back, biting her lip. But she wasn't finished yet. A few minutes later, as James calmly filled out the forms and presented his proof of funds, she leaned over to a colleague and whispered, I bet he doesn't have the money for all this, he'll end up leaving. James heard the remark, but instead of getting angry, he turned gently and said, with an icy smile, I think you're forgetting that I pay for what I want, and that I can do it with or without your approval. But thank you for your concern, it's touching. A shocked silence fell over the room. The receptionist stepped back, red with anger and humiliation, while Michael raised an eyebrow, visibly impressed by James's composure. Then came the crucial moment, negotiating the price. The receptionist, visibly annoyed that James was managing to stay in control of the situation, tried another tactic. Mr. Carter, some models have hidden fees, unexpected taxes, maintenance costs. Are you sure you're prepared to deal with all of that? James replied calmly, without hesitation, Yes, I am perfectly aware of these costs. I have done my calculations and projections for the next 5 years. You seem to think I don't understand anything about finance, but I can assure you that I am perfectly capable of managing every aspect of this acquisition. Michael, visibly impressed, interjected, Very well, I believe we have an agreement on the transaction. Mr. Carter, if you wish, we can prepare the final documents and arrange the delivery of the Falcon 8X. The receptionist, defeated but inwardly furious, simply looked away. James gave her a calm, almost compassionate look. You should learn that judging someone before knowing their story is a mistake you quickly regret. As he signed the final paperwork and discussed logistical details with Michael, James felt a strange satisfaction. He hadn't just resisted condescension and attempts at sabotage, he had commanded respect through his dignity and expertise. But he knew his ultimate revenge, the one that would make the receptionist deeply regret how she had treated him, wasn't over yet. And in his mind, James was already beginning to imagine the moment when he would reveal the truth about his identity and his success, transforming the initial humiliation into a resounding triumph. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the large windows of the dealership's showroom when James Carter, calmly and with an almost imperceptible smile, completed the signing of the documents. The Falcon 8X was officially his. Michael Harding, respectful and impressed, extended his hand. Mr. Carter, I must say, I have never met anyone with such composure and control in a negotiation. Congratulations. James shook Michael's hand firmly. Thank you, Michael. Your professionalism and attentiveness made all the difference. But the atmosphere in the room remained tense. The blonde receptionist, still motionless behind her counter, seemed paralyzed by the humiliation she had suffered. Her colleagues, who had previously regarded James with skepticism, now cast admiring glances at him. It was then that James decided it was time to end the charade. He walked over to the receptionist, his face calm but firm, and placed his hand on the counter. You've been very skeptical of me from the start, haven't you? She looked at him, surprised, unable to respond immediately. James continued, You judged my appearance and doubted my creditworthiness. You tried to discourage me, to make me feel like I didn't belong here. A heavy silence fell. Every eye in the room turned towards them. James took a deep breath and revealed the truth with a calm that took everyone's breath away. I'm not just a farmer from Mississippi. My land and agricultural investments have allowed me to amass a fortune that many envy. And today, I bought this jet from you, exactly as I wanted it. You humiliated me, but I proved your judgment based on appearances wrong. The receptionist paled. Her eyes widened as she grasped the gravity of the situation. Murmurs began to ripple through the lobby. Some employees whispered amongst themselves, impressed by James's stature and composure, while others stood speechless at the revelation. James added with a slight smile, "Next time you meet someone, perhaps you should get to know the person first before judging them. You've just missed your only opportunity to humiliate me." He turned to Michael and said calmly, "Let's arrange the jet delivery." "I'm leaving today." Michael nodded immediately, respectfully. "Absolutely, Mr. Carter. Everything will be ready in the next few hours." As James left the lobby, each step resonated as an affirmation of his dignity. The blonde receptionist remained motionless, unable to utter a word, as James walked out to the admiring and astonished gaze of all the witnesses. He hadn't just bought a private jet, he had transformed humiliation into triumph, reminding everyone that a person's true worth is not measured by their appearance or their clothes, but by their determination, intelligence, and dignity. Twilight bathed the dealership parking lot in a golden light as James Carter took his final steps toward his Falcon 8X. The employees, still reeling from the revelation, watched him pass with a mixture of respect and disbelief. The blonde receptionist, meanwhile, remained motionless behind the counter, unable to utter a word or hide the shame etched on her face. James boarded the jet with regal composure, placing his bag on the seat and caressing the console with the precision of a man who knew exactly what he had. Michael Harding followed him, demonstrating the latest features and flight procedures. But James was no longer impressed by displays of luxury, he knew that true triumph lay elsewhere. As the Falcon 8X's engine roared softly, ready to take to the skies, James cast a final glance at the receptionist and murmured with unwavering calm, "The next time you meet someone, remember that a person's worth isn't always apparent at first glance." Then he closed the door behind him. Michael closed the porthole with an admiring smile. "Mr. Carter, you are an example of dignity and strength." The plane climbed slowly, and James watched the city disappear beneath him. The feeling was liberating. He hadn't just bought a jet, he had bought respect and demonstrated that no one had the right to judge a life based on its appearance. In the days that followed, the story quietly spread through luxury and business circles. An elderly black farmer from Mississippi had defied stereotypes, resisted humiliation, and acquired a Falcon 8X with exemplary determination and composure. Whispers of his perseverance and success even reached the aviation industry's social media, where some were already dubbing him the man who taught respect. For James Carter, this victory was more than just material. It was proof that a life built on hard work, intelligence, and dignity could triumph over scorn and prejudice. And in the sky, as his jet sliced through the clouds, he smiled. The land he had cultivated for decades was not only fertile in harvests, it had also prepared him for this resounding victory. The world had tried to underestimate him, but James Carter had just proven that some dreams, even the most improbable, could come true.